We now go via video link to Seema Malhotra, after which the time limit will go down to 5 minutes. Seema Malhotra.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The extension of furlough and the maintaining of the universal credit uplift are a relief. Cutting universal credit at this time would have been unthinkable, and I thank everyone who joined with Labour in making this point. The Chancellor should have announced this sooner. Last-minute changes and U-turns have become the hallmark of this government, with us now facing the worst economic crisis of any major economy. The government U-turned last week on the £500 test and trace support payment so that parents who stay at home because their children have to self-isolate aren't forced to go without pay or to take annual or unpaid leave. But today, he's failed to extend the uplift to those on legacy benefits, including many with disabilities, without explanation. Madam Deputy Speaker, the pandemic has exposed a lack of resilience in our economy, in family finances and in our institutions. We've witnessed the struggle of a weakened and poorly equipped NHS and a social care system after 10 years of the Conservatives. Even before the pandemic, a quarter of households had less than £100 in savings. Madam Deputy Speaker, Step Change has said that 1.2 million people now face severe problem debt, a figure which has doubled since the beginning of the pandemic. My local food banks are struggling, with stories of children turning up without clean clothes to wear. We need to plan now so that we don't emerge less equal as a society. We saw nothing today that will help that. No pay rise for social care workers. Instead, a forced rise in council tax. The increase in the national minimum wage seems to be a U-turn on the 49p an hour promised last March. The increase in apprenticeship incentives comes on the back of widespread criticism of the apprenticeship levy, with millions unspent. There's a gender impact too. Before the coronavirus pandemic, women, especially low-paid, disabled and minority ethnic women, were more likely than men to be in debt. 61% of those getting into debt to purchase everyday necessities are women. And his speech failed to mention children. 4.2 million children were living in poverty before the pandemic, 9 in a classroom of 30. Removing the 2-child limit and the benefit cap would lift hundreds of thousands of children out of poverty, but he chose not to. 500,000 people are behind on their rent due to the pandemic. Mortgage prisoners, those trapped with their existing lender on high interest rates, are paying hundreds of thousands a year extra in mortgage payments to vulture funds and inactive lenders. Forbearance measures are still urgently needed, and a plan to tackle child poverty. Madam Deputy Speaker, the jobs crisis is hitting the youngest as well as the oldest hardest. Around 600,000 young people are without work, risking a lost generation. Even before the pandemic, and there were around 800,000 people aged 50 to 64 not in work who wanted to be. We need a plan for employment to match the scale of the crisis. That's why it's inexplicable that at the height of the pandemic, work coach hiring almost stopped, with less than 15 work coaches hired from April to June as caseloads more than doubled to over 280 per work coach last summer. His Kickstart scheme has been more of a false start, with only 2,000 placements to date, and Restart hasn't started at all. That's why we need Labour's new jobs promise to guarantee young people aged 16 to 24 unemployed for over 6 months, a training or jobs placement, and to extend the same guarantee to those aged over 24 unemployed for over 12 months. And thirdly, investment and green growth across every region and nation of the UK. Madam Deputy Speaker, as we recover from the pandemic, we must invest at speed for growth. A jobs recovery needs a green recovery. Labour's Green Economic Recovery Report would have been a good read for the Chancellor, with plans to spur job creation across the country, including 400,000 green jobs, with many for young people. Just as Britain led the world into the first industrial revolution, swift and targeted government investment and coordination with the private and voluntary sectors is needed to stimulate the economy and jobs. And on good jobs, the Mayor of London's new Good Work standard is the kind of thinking we need to tackle the scourge of low-paid, insecure work, along with flexible recruitment and workplace well-being plans. We should be investing in community-led co-ops. We should see the employment bill come before Parliament. And on aviation, we urgently need a better sector-specific deal to support jobs, to help airports, airlines, and those in the wider supply chain, the ground handlers, caterers, and other businesses critical for aviation and for our economy and trade. Employment in aviation communities like Feltham and Hessen has been hit very hard and needs much stronger leadership from the government right now. We should lead the way in the world on zero carbon aviation, but this means accelerating R&D investment to support innovation in the future of green transportation and logistics, and for new technologies to be contributing to greater productivity for businesses in our supply chains. Madam Deputy Speaker, today's budget needed to put in place the strong foundations to support businesses and to give security to all our families, building the base for resilience, for a competitive future, and for shared prosperity for all. Sadly, it fell far short.